This is the second video about oil. It's that important what is happening. You can see it in the chart here. Man, it's all or nothing for the oil price right now. This week will be extremely important, especially today. Why? Well, it's the last day of the month of June, so it's the end of the month and also the end of the second quarter. So we're going to get two long-term candles that are extremely important for the development of the oil price. We'll talk about it today. What is influencing the oil market and the oil price? How do I see it? And one of my favorite oil dividend stocks that I am buying. Let's go. Welcome to Hot Trades of the Day, your show for swing trading ideas for the coming days, weeks, and month. So, I hope you've seen the first video about oil that I published on Friday. If not, you can find the link here. I highly recommend that you watch it because there I talked about the first two factors for oil, which are the fundamentals and the valuations. Summarizing that real quick, fundamentals, obviously supply and demand. The important factor here is that we have shadow supply from Russia, from Iran, and we have lower demand. All right. Ever since the US reached oil independence, the demand for oil, global oil, has decreased, especially Middle Eastern oil. And that is a big shift in the oil fundamentals. As I said in the last video, again, I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it already. I think we'll only see an oil price over 120 in times of really severe geopolitical developments and crisis. The last time we saw oil over 100 was literally when Russia invaded Ukraine, all right? Which, as you can see, was right here. That's where we had 120, because when we had the first continental war since the Second World War in Europe, and ever since then we've gone down. So today we're going to talk about the two other factors that are really important, which are geopolitics and what I call the market technicals. So sentiment, the size of the energy sector, which is extremely important in today's ETF world, and these type of things. So we'll start with geopolitics. Geopolitics plays an important role in obviously a lot of commodities, but none more so than oil. Obviously also in gold, but more indirectly. Gold reacts as a safe harbor to geopolitical risk, right? While oil, obviously it absolutely affects how economies function, how supply and demand functions. So geopolitics, we need to talk about this. And this is the most important factor that most people don't understand when they look at the oil price now. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, we are clearly seeing that oil has been used as a geopolitical weapon against the Russian oil industry to weaken the Russian economy. Now, let's take a look at the big players and look at Iran and the Israel-Iran war and decide and see why things are shaping up the way they're shaping up in the Israel-Iran war and what's happening right now. So when we do an objective analysis, then as sad as it makes me to say that, the truth is nobody of regional or global power has an interest in a government change in Iran. That's the truth. You may not want to hear it, but that's the truth. The Saudis, no interest in it, because if the Iranian oil comes on the market big time, that'll lower the oil price. The Russians don't want it because they want Iran, keep Iran as an ally. If there's a government change, they lose one of the very, very few allies they have left. The Chinese don't want it because they want the cheap oil from Iran, right? There's a reason why the Iranians haven't done anything on the street of hummus, as I call it, right? Because I do like hummus. Because that's not in China's interest. And then there's Trump, who's in the pocket of the Saudis and therefore will do what they tell him to do. So it's very, very unfortunate. Nobody has an interest that the government changes. That's a real problem for Israel, right? I would love to see a government change in Iran, obviously, well, for two reasons. A, it would be great for the world. B, it would be great for Iran. Man, if they had a government change and someone would bring out an Iran ETF, I would buy it hand over fist. That thing would go up 30% a year for years. That country has so much potential. but it's likely not gonna happen. So, with all that in mind, what does that mean? That means nobody wants a change in the Iranian government, in the geopolitical dynamics there. So the crisis will stand, right? One of the big problems that we will get out of Trump's reaction is that for the Iranian government and for any other government that is worried that the US or other pro-Western countries may try to overthrow them, they now know proxies don't matter, alliances don't matter because the Russians left Iran hanging. We need the bomb. That's it. That's going to be the number one thing on everybody's list now. So, not great. The world has not become more peaceful now. So, even though that's the case, oil price is at 65, right? Because the West is pushing down the oil price. Now, will that ever get out of the market? Not in the near future, not anytime soon. Why? Because they need the oil price to be low or as low as possible to put pressure on the Russian economy. And Putin has no interest in any type of peace. If you know anything about the war in Ukraine, what Putin is all about, what his true motivation is, and what his goals are, then you know he has no interest in peace. You look at what he has done with the Russian economy, he has turned it completely into a war economy. He can't go back, all right? If he turns his back on war, the Russian economy is going to implode, and his oligarch friends are going to be seriously upset because they're going to lose all their money. He has no choice. Besides that, he doesn't want to have any peace. So the geopolitical factor is in play, but it's also well known, right? All the factors, Putin's behavior in the oil price, right? Iran probably going to keep the government in the oil price. So there are no factors right now that would lead to a severe spike in the oil price, which leads us to the last point, right? The market sentiment, the market technicals. Energy has been beaten down so much that energy stocks are actually the smallest sector in the S&P 500 right now. So nobody's invested, it's 5%, right? Which is good in one way, because that means nobody's invested in it. If we get a turnaround, everybody needs to be buying. And that is golden times if you are first, right? The bad thing is this will take time. And that is because you don't grow a sector size in the S&P 500 in a week or in a month from 5% to 8% or something like that, right? Which again, doesn't sound like much, is significant when nobody's invested. Everybody's doing passive investing. ETFs are the name of the game. So therefore, if we want energy stocks to go up significantly, then it has to happen within the sectors. The sector have to increase, the weight of the sector have to increase in the S&P 500 to really get the energy stocks moving. That'll take time. If you want quick returns, then the energy sector is not for you. That's why I played through the dividend stocks. So my primary motivation of buying oil companies is I want to collect the dividends, and then on top I get the long-term upside. That's what I do. I gave you Petrobras as one of my top choices last week, and this week I would like to introduce you to a more speculative version of Petrobras, so to speak, but same geographic area. It's called Ecopetrol, and it's basically the Petrobras of Colombia. Now, hold on to your pants if you're getting a shock because it's Colombia right now. Here's what happened, or is going on with Ecopetrol. Let's look at the long-term chart. Boy, it looks brutal. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. So we are at the weekly right now. Look at this. We are basically at levels where we were 2015, 2016. How is that even possible? This is a complete laggard. What is going on? Well, what is going on is politics. So when you care about emerging markets investments, then you have to understand that there's a political component in the emerging markets that creates risk but also reward. And in Colombia, it's the following. Last presidential election, for the first time in 40 years, the left party won. What happens when the left party usually wins for any type of country? it's bad news for the economy. That's exactly what has happened in Colombia, right? It's so bad that S&P and Moody's have downgraded Colombian debt and changed the outlook to negative. The polls are terrible for the current president and the ruling left party. And this is the interesting part. So Ecopetrol and almost all Colombian stocks, which has a big, big commodity sector because it's a commodity-rich country, are dirt cheap. Price earnings ratio is about 5.2 for Ecopetrol for the trailing 12 month. Not even for the coming 12 month. So it's super, super cheap. It's an $80 billion company, right? And obviously what I like, they gave out, depending on if they cut the dividend or not, they have a dividend yield somewhere between 12% to, hold on to your fake hair, 25%, right? 25% dividend yield. And they've paid this in the past. Why? And here comes the interesting part. Because the Colombian government owns around 89% of the company. Now, this is where things become really interesting. And by the way, if you like this content, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss gems like Ecopetrol that are not discussed anywhere else. So, one of the reasons why Ecopetrol is down is because there have been talks of the left-wing party in the past about nationalizing the energy sector. Hasn't happened, but there were talks. Freaked out foreign investors, everybody left. There's nobody left, right? However, this is the big one. Next year, May 31st, 2026, we have the next presidential elections. Now, this is the kicker. Nobody is looking at that right now because nobody is invested in Colombia right now. So we can pick this stock up dirt cheap. We get an incredible dividend yield that will likely only increase if the oil price keeps going up because business is going really well actually for Ecopetrol. And if the left government gets ousted, then we have a huge political catalyst. Now, if they win the election for some magical reason, we probably have a downside, but it's not going to be that bad because we're already beaten down in this stock. So this is a risk-reward ratio that I really like. It's not for everybody because, again, it has a political component, but this component also gives us a major upside, right? I have major Argentina vibes from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Take a look at stocks like Abra Silva and other Argentinian commodity stocks, or the Merval, the Argentinian index, and see what's going on there after the government changed. We could see the exact same thing in Colombia. This is what I'm betting on. It's a bet, right? I'm not saying this is for you. This is what I'm doing. Am I putting all my money into Ecopetrol? Hell no. But I'm putting in some money. Some money where I say, okay, if I have to cut my losses next year, pretty much a year from now, 11 months, then that's fine. Because by that time, I'll also have collected the dividend a couple of times. So that is already a security buffer that I have, right? If I buy the stock now and I collect the dividend of, let's say, 15%, right, before the election next year, and the left party for some magical reason wins, I don't understand how they could, but anything can happen, obviously, it's emerging markets, and the stock goes down 30%, and I sell it, my net loss is 15%. That's a risk reward I'm willing to take because this thing can easily double or triple if the oil price just establishes itself above the downtrend and goes back in the range that we talked about in the first video of around $80-ish per barrel. So let me finish up this video, which is way long, but I really wanted to give you this investment opportunity in the oil sector nobody's talking about. I mean, look at this. In 2022, right, we're at 20. We're at 9 now. So we're not even talking about like prices from when oil was 150, where we were around 60, right? Which would be a 5-bagger. I'm not even saying we're getting there. We could, right? Because again, nobody is invested in this stock right now. So this is very speculative. Again, it only makes sense if you own it with the election in mind. If it's not for you, I again say, Look at the Americans, right? The American oil companies fundamentally, or in Europe, like something like Total Energies, great company. And then you also will get a really attractive dividend, but obviously not as great of a dividend as you would get with Petrobras or Ecopetrol. That's it for today. Have a great start to the week. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.